Tonight we're going to continue to explore what it means to have faith. I loved Pastor Erb's analogy about Christmas. Faith comes almost automatically with some of those kinds of things that we know absolutely are going to happen. It's kind of like the old American Express card. You remember that? Don't leave home without it. Better not leave home without faith. In fact, I don't think you can leave home without faith. It's something that all of us have. It's just in different things. For example, you go to the doctor. The doctor, someone maybe you've never met, can't even pronounce their name. They make a prescription, and you can't even read their handwriting. And then you go to a pharmacist that you do not even know, and that pharmacist then gives you a chemical compound that you do not understand, and she says to you, take this with the sure and the certain hope that it will make you better. That's faith, right? Wouldn't you describe that as faith? Something that you would believe in. Well, tonight, of course, we want to talk about our faith in God. Not a faith that just limps along, not a faith that is just there every now and then, but a faith that will last, a faith that will leap forward. Kind of like the faith that the people in Hebrews had. These heroes, we say, of the faith. It says there, now faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. It's what the ancients were commended for. But what about today? Psychologists would say, look in here for the answers. Look within. The opportunists would say, look around you. Opportunity always knocks. The optimist, look ahead. The pessimist, look out. But Christians, we say, look up. Look up and meet the gaze of the one who is looking out for you, not just for this life, but for all of eternity. We have again these words from the writer of the Hebrews, fix your eyes on Jesus. He is the author, he is the perfecter of your faith. It begins with him, it develops with him, it endures with him, and finally it ends with him in heaven. So I would like for you to have a faith that first of all looks up to God, but then lets go of everything else that people in this world hang on to, and then finally leap forward to be with him forever. Now here's the problem, even for us as believers. We live in this world. And where else are we going to live unless we're in the next? But we live in this world and we want to hold on to it. Throughout the Bible, we're told it's temporary. You get your 75, 80, maybe if you're really lucky or blessed, you'll get a little bit more, maybe 90, maybe even 100, but it could also be far, far less. People hang on to it. They grip onto this world. They want to expand it. They want to manipulate it to their own purposes. So we hold on to all of our possessions. We hold on to our children, our relationships. But we also hold on to our gripes, our hurts, our grievances, our bad attitudes. And we won't let go of them either. It's because we don't see clearly. We don't see what God sees. We don't have his eyes. We can't see the future. It's like Paul says, we look through a glass dimly. So I could tell you today, the sun was out. I could quote from Psalm 118, as I'm apt to do. This is the day the Lord has made, and your response cheerfully would be? Let us rejoice. Let us rejoice. And yet there were those today who said, rejoice. Do you realize there's 3 feet of snow on the ground, and I do not like snow? There were those who said, I had to shovel that blank stuff, right? There were those who said, I couldn't get out of my garage today because of that stuff. There were those who said, I slipped on that stuff, and I fell and I hurt myself. And now I have to have an operation. I could say, I survived cancer 32 years ago. And yet there would be those who would say, I know 32 people who didn't. I remember I had this baseball player when I was coaching in high school. Great attitude, great kid, loved the kid. He was in my wedding, actually. And he would say every day, Coach, if you can believe it, you can achieve it. That's right, you've heard that. Great attitude, great kid, still in touch today. He believed in all his heart that he was going to do great things. But there were others on that team that believed with all their heart they were going to do great things, and they did not. And there are those believers who also have held on to God's promises. And they have lost, not just the little things, but the big ones. A dying child, a spouse who left them, a divorce, a job that was lost, a relationship that was betrayed, a trust that was no longer there. It's this loss of faith that so many people have when they feel like they've been let down by God's promises. And then they fall into despair. And maybe you've been there. As we look at Hebrews 11 once again, and I would encourage you, read that chapter again. Read it. All the names that are there from Abraham, the patriarch, all the way to Rahab, the prostitute, and see these heroes of the faith. Now, do you think that they ever were disappointed? And they could have fallen into despair as well. Certainly our hero Abraham, verse 8, it says, by faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place that he was to receive an inheritance. Let's just quickly review Abraham. He's 75 years old. He's going to live another 100 years, but he doesn't know that. God has told him, I am going to make of you a great nation, but he's not. He said, I am going to give you as many offspring as there are stars in the sky. Tonight you could go out and you could look and see those stars. Can you count them? You cannot. God said, that's how many. But God, I don't have any yet. How am I going to have as many as the stars in the sky? How am I going to be a great nation? And then God says, oh, by the way, I want you to just pick up everything and leave. Can you imagine the conversation he had in the tent that night with Sarah? Hey, honey, guess what? I got a call from God. Told me I'm gonna move. I'm gonna be a great nation. Oh, really, honey? Where is that? Did you get an address? Which state is that? Well, I'm not real sure. He hasn't told me yet. Well, surely you have a job, don't you? I mean, we're not going to move without you having a job. Well, God will provide. Now, that's faith. That's faith. It's not just an attitude. It's not just a feeling. It's not just a belief. Faith is an act of obedience. And so Abraham picked up everything from the land of Haran, and he went to the land of Canaan, to where God guided him to go, even though he didn't understand. That's faith, looking up. Looking up and meeting the gaze of our God, who has our best interest, our life, our soul, our salvation at heart. And then letting go. Letting go even though the world says to hold on. When we're afraid that we might lose our grip, salvation is all about letting go. There's a great story. Howard Olds tells this. I won't tell it as well as he does. But can you imagine? How many of you like to ride a bike? Any bike riders? Not today, of course, but when the weather gets good, like to ride a bike? Does anybody ride a tandem? Ridden a tandem? I did it one time with Philip. I've never done it again. Never. Well, Howard Olds says, that's what our life is like as a Christian. It's like riding a bike, a tandem bike. And in the beginning, well, we want to, where do we want to be? In the front, of course, guiding, steering, knowing where we are going. And Howard says that it was kind of boring, but at least it was predictable. He knew where he was going. But then, somewhere along the line, Jesus suggested that maybe he should drive and Howard should pedal. He wasn't real sure about that. He wasn't sure that Jesus knew where his life should go. I mean, after all, what does Jesus know about riding a bike? What does he know about life? But pretty soon he said, we were seeing all kinds of stuff I never got to see before. We weren't taking shortcuts, we were taking long cuts. We were going through the mountains and the meadows and over the rivers. And you know what, that Jesus fella, he's pretty good with a bike. He knows some really good bike tricks. He can really go around the sharp curves. And we would be going at breakneck speed. And I would say, slow down. And Jesus would just say, hold on. Just hold on. And I would get really anxious, he would say, and I would be afraid. And Jesus would just reach back and he would touch my hand. And I'd say, Jesus, where are we going? And he wouldn't say. He just smiled. And he'd say, Howard, just pedal. And along the way, this was really neat. He says, along the way, we would get gifts. People would give us gifts. Things like wisdom and acceptance and joy. And we would stop, we would get these gifts, and then we would go along our way again. And then Jesus would say, you know what, we really don't need all those gifts. Kind of weigh us down, extra heavy baggage. Why don't you give them away? And so I did, and I found out that when I gave them away, I got even more. And they were light. And when I didn't think I could pedal anymore, Jesus would just smile. And he'd say, leave it to me. I'll take you home. The faith of a believer begins with our eyes fixed on Jesus, who knows everything about our life and where we're headed, and then letting go that grip on this temporary earth that we have, and looking to the home that Jesus has for us. And then finally, to have that kind of faith that our ancestors did, we want to take a leap forward, kind of like Indiana Jones did in The Last Crusade. You remember the movie? He's my favorite guy. I just wish I could wear a hat like him. Crack the whip, that'd be pretty cool. So you remember the scene. Indiana Jones is there. He's going to find the Holy Grail, the supposed cup that Jesus used at the Last Supper. And there's this huge cavern. There's no way to get across. You can't see anything. And then it comes to him. It takes a leap of faith. It takes a leap of faith. Kierkegaard said, not only does it take a leap of faith to believe in Jesus, but to believe in the nature of a God who loves us and only has our interest in mind. I don't know that anyone of the heroes could have had a greater faith than Abraham. At the age of 75, to leave everything behind. To be told that you were going to be the father of a great nation, to wait 25 years for that child to be born. To a 90-year-old woman, by the way. How often do you see that? Especially one who's never had a child in her life. And now God says, hey, Abraham, this son that I've given you, this only son, the one that you love so dearly, guess what? Just to test you, I want you to take him up the mountain. It's a 3-day journey, Mount Moriah. Give you a couple servants, but they can't go the whole way. Strap the wood on the back of your 16-year-old, and I want you to make a sacrifice. For 3 days, they're climbing up the mountain. Now, Isaac, he's a smart kid. This ain't no dummy. He says, Dad, we're going to make a sacrifice. We're going to worship God on this mountain. What a great adventure. But don't we have to have a lamb? God will provide. Isaac, my son, our God can do the impossible. Just wait and see. His promise will prevail. And then you get to the moment of truth, and here is Isaac going along in obedience to his father, strapped there on the altar, hands bound, trusting his father. And the arm goes up, and the knife is about to come down. Tell me, how can all the promises of God come true when the only heir is about to die? How can there be offspring as great as the stars in the sky? How can there be a great nation when there is no nation? Abraham believed in the impossible, that God could raise people from the dead. Abraham, Abraham. Here I am, Lord. Now I know that you love God even more than this, your son, your only son. And about that time, there in the bushes, God did provide the ram, the sacrifice. Fast forward 2 millennia. Another son, the only son, the son of the promise, wood strapped to his back, climbing down now the very same Mount Moriah called Golgotha, with confidence in God's promises. He had told his disciples, the Son of Man must suffer and he will die. And then on the 3rd day, God will raise him from the dead. God's promises will prevail even when it doesn't make sense, even when we don't understand, even when we are confused, even when we can't see clearly. Even when Jesus said, I commend my spirit, he had confidence that he would be raised from the dead. And God provided the lamb as the fulfillment of that sacrifice. As we again contemplate the ashes and the cross, we know that this life is temporary. Remember, from dust you are, and to dust you will return. And yet the cross reminds us that there is a God who has provided a way. And throughout the entire Scripture, when he makes a promise, as he did to Abraham and to Isaac and to Jacob and Moses and all the way down the line, it is always fulfilled. So during these 40 days, as you journey to the cross and the empty tomb, there will be days when you aren't going to say, this is the day the Lord has made. There are going to be times when you are confused. There are times when you are going to feel broken, where the burden of this life, where the burden of your own sin is too great. May you then again say with confidence, God's promises will prevail. Keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and the perfecter of your faith. Let go your grip on this world and leap forward in faith. May God grant that for Jesus' sake. Amen.